everyone, we are going to do what I call a ScoliFlow today. So we are taking all of your scoliosis-specific exercises and Schroth exercises, and we're combining them with a little bit more fast-paced dynamic movement, strengthening, coordination type exercises. We're going to use minimal equipment so that it's easier to do at home, and also so that we can keep the little bit faster pace that we're going for. So we're going to start out with a warm-up flow sequence. And so what you're going to do is you're going to start by finding your best three-dimensional postural correction, lining up ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over ankles, making sure that your pelvis is underneath your trunk, so lining up nose and belly button. If you need to shift from left to right or right to left, go ahead and do that. Maintain gentle activation in your core, gentle activation in your glutes. And then our first movement here, we are just inhaling, reaching up overhead, and then exhaling, lowering back down. Inhaling, think about expanding your concavities. Exhaling, maintaining that activation and expansion here. We'll do one more time. Inhaling, lengthening up. Exhaling, lowering down. And then we're going to take this into a hip hinge next. Inhale again, lengthen, expand, open through your concavities. Hinge from your hips, reach forward. And then come back up. Inhale again, grow tall, grow wide. Hinge from your hips. And come back up. Every time you come back up into standing, you're finding your best postural correction here. Maintaining that length through your spine. We're going to add a squat movement next. So now, using that hip hinge, using your lower extremities for strengthening, coming into a squat and back up. As you stand back up, check that your hips are centered underneath your trunk, nose and belly button lining up. Coming down into that squat again and back up. And then one more time into the squat. Back up into standing. Find that best standing correction, ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over ankles. Lots of space between the top of your hips, bottom of your rib cage. Think about your curve pattern for a moment here. Make sure that you are maintaining optimal expansion through your concavities, that you're containing the prominences, you're maintaining that neutral spine. And then we're going to come down onto the mat, lying down onto your back here. And we're just going to do a few breaths, working on getting into that postural correction, and then we're going to go straight into movement. So I'm not using any props today so that it's easier to add the movement pieces, but I still am going to take just a few breaths. I'm going to do 3. Inhaling, lengthening, expanding, opening through the concavities of your spine. As you exhale, think about maintaining that expansion, activating your core, keeping that correction as best you can. Inhale, lengthen, expand, and open. Exhale, push, keep some pressure and tension, maintain that correction. One more breath. Really trying to maintain your best correction here before we move. And now we're going to take this into a bridge. So inhale again, lengthen, expand, and open. As you exhale, lift your hips up in the air. And then lower back down. We're going to do 5 of these. Inhaling, lowering. Exhaling, lifting. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. One more time. Inhale, lowering down. Exhale, lifting up. As you come back down, reset. Make sure that you are still in your best postural correction. Think about the weight through your feet. Think about the positioning of your hips. Make any adjustments you need to stay in your best alignment. And then we're going to do some heel taps here. So this is good core exercise. So hips and knees at 90 degrees. You're going to try to maintain the 90-degree angle at your knees and make this motion come from your hips. So tapping one heel down, and then the other. We're gonna do 10 total, so 5 on each leg. If you cannot get your heel all the way to the ground without arching your back or feeling like you're using your back, just do a slight less movement. So just don't move as far down. Throughout this entire time, you're still thinking about containing your prominences, thinking about maintaining that expansion through the concavities. Do one more on each leg here. And then reset. So knees bent, feet flat on the ground. And we're gonna go ahead and do just arms here next. So reaching arms up overhead. Inhaling, extending one arm back, lifting up. Then the other arm back, lifting up. Your goal again is to maintain that neutral spine. I always like to do inhaling with lengthening and exhaling on a contraction. Sometimes that makes sense for the exercise. Sometimes it's harder to see where that breath should happen. You can really follow your own breath cycle. Your breath is just a tool to help you maintain the correction. You should be able to do it regardless of whether you're inhaling or exhaling. So you can do what feels natural to you, so long as you are maintaining that neutral spine here. Last one on each arm. And then coming back up, resetting. Now we're gonna go ahead and lift legs up and arms up, and we're gonna try to combine them. So extending opposite arm and leg. This time I'm not maintaining that 90-degree angle at my knee. I'm just extending my leg out straight. And you wanna pick a position that is challenging for you, but also doable. So the lower you let your leg go, the harder it is to stabilize through your low back, the more likely your spine is to lift off the mat. So pick a position where you feel like you can maintain control first and then move from that position of stability. So last one each side. Come on back up. Feet down on the mat, arms at your side one more time here. Take another breath in. Check that you're in your best postural correction here. And then we're gonna go ahead and come up into sitting just for a moment. And you're gonna sit. Make sure that you're sitting in your best postural correction. Equal weight through your sit bones, sitting nice and tall. Think about still lining up nose over belly button just for a moment, because we're transitioning into a side lying position. If you've done scoliosis-specific exercises in Schroth, you know there may be a specific side that it's better for you to lie on when you're doing your exercise. We're gonna start on that side. So we're usually thinking primary concavity up. We're gonna do both sides though, so if you're unsure, try to maintain that neutral spine. We're gonna do both sides. And again, just because I'm trying to maintain the little bit faster pace, we're not using a lot of equipment here because we're gonna be mostly going into a side plank. So kind of a modified side plank here. I'm keeping the bottom leg bent for stability, coming down onto my elbow, lining up shoulder and ear, and then top leg staying out straight here too. I like to put top arm on shoulder, and then all we're doing from here is lifting up and lowering down. So we're gonna do 10 on each side. You wanna think about inhaling, opening through the concavity of your back, and then lowering back down as you exhale. The entire time thinking about that nice neutral spine, really working to stabilize here, lifting only as far as you feel comfortable to lift, and working from there. We're always trying to achieve stability and then mobility. So that stable, neutral spine out of your curve pattern to the best of your ability, and then moving from that position. We'll do one more, and then we're gonna switch sides. Same thing, other side. So bottom leg bent here, top leg out straight, down onto your elbow, fingertips on shoulders. We're still trying to keep that line of ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips here, and then lifting up and lowering down. Again, we're shooting for 10 on each side. You're trying to the best of your ability to maintain that nice neutral spine. These movements are more dynamic, so it's challenging to work out of your curve pattern. And as we couple movement with strength challenge, it's especially hard. So you want to make sure that you're able to do it well enough, that you're not collapsing, that you're not just in your curve, but also recognize you may not get as perfect correction when you're doing dynamic movement as you are in the static positions. And that's why it's really great to practice both. So one more, coming back up into sitting for just that moment, finding that best sitting position, nose lining up with belly button, equal weight through your sit bones. We're going to work on a little hip mobility here for just a second. So from this seated position, you can put your arms behind you for some support. I'm going to scoot back just to give myself some space. And we're just going to do rotating through your hips here. So you're just, you can call these 90-90s. So just working on a little hip mobility while we're sitting here, still thinking about that long spine. We'll do one more each side. And then we're going to come up into a tall kneeling position here next. So in tall kneeling, just like in standing, we're thinking about lining up nose over belly button, maintaining ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over knees in this case, so equal weight through your knees, nice and tall, rib cage lifted away from your spine. We're going to go ahead and start with a modified squat, so hands right behind your head, hinging from your hips, sitting back, sitting up tall, hinging back, sitting up tall again. So we're going to do 5, so 2 more here. Last one. Now we're going to do the reach, so reaching forward and then coming back up. So it's like the hip hinge from a half kneeling position. Reaching forward, back up, coming up forward, back up here, and then one other version. Now we're going to do leaning back. So this is a little different. You're going to get a thigh stretch here, leaning straight back, coming up. Always thinking about maintaining that best alignment here. Ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over ankles or knees. In this case, one more time. All right, so now we're going to transition up into standing. If you need to, something for support, that's fine. If you need to push off your legs, that's fine. But you want to see if you can come up on one leg, tuck your back toe, and just come all the way up into standing without needing support. And then we're going to do some reverse lunges here. So first, find that best standing position, lining up nose and belly button, ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over ankles, standing nice and tall. You can keep hands on your hips if that helps you. It helps me kind of stay centered with hips square. You're going to take a big step back with your right leg, and then we're going to drop your right knee down towards the ground. So the bigger the step back you take, the easier it is. And we're going to do 5 reverse lunges, only going it down as far to the ground as you feel comfortable and can maintain stability. So it may not be that your knee is touching, mine's not touching, and that's okay. We're just doing what works for us right now. If you can go lower and it feels good to you, great. If you can do less, that's fine. If you need to stand close to something so you can have some support, that's okay too. Back up into standing, reset, find that best standing position, and then big step back with your left leg. Drop that left knee down towards the ground. Same thing, 5 lunges here. Good, and then come back up into standing. Standing tall, ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over ankles. We're gonna come back down onto the ground again into a tabletop position with hands underneath shoulders and knees underneath hips. So we're gonna work on a sequence that is basically down dog to a modified child's pose or puppy pose. So starting here, hands underneath shoulders, knees underneath hips. Take a breath in, check that you're in your best position. You're gonna extend one leg back out straight, then the next. Hold this plank for a full inhalation and exhalation. Send your hips back into down dog. And then back down into the plank. Following your own breath cycle, so one full inhalation and exhalation in each position. We're gonna do 3 of these. Coming back down one more time into that plank. Then back into the down dog. Back into the plank just briefly. You can bring your knees back down to the mat. And so instead of doing the normal child's pose where we're getting a lot of rounding through the back, I like to do kind of a modified version, which is almost like our prone on knees exercise that we do in Schroth, where you're really thinking about lengthening through your spine, getting a stretch here, but we're not trying to let our spine really round. So take a moment, stretch in this position. Maintain that expansion through the concavities of your spine. One more breath, and then back up into the tabletop. So we are also going to do some hip strengthening in this position. So maintain some gentle activation in your core. You're going to lift one leg straight out to the side and back down. We're going to do 5 on each leg. So this is coming from your hip. We're working glutes here. You're trying not to side bend, so trying not to collapse through the concavities of your curve, trying to maintain that nice neutral spine. Other side, same thing. And then back into tabletop here. Now we're going to do arms. Reaching up, lowering down, 5 on each side. And then other arm, same thing. I like to keep thumb pointing up to the ceiling. It's a little easier on your shoulders. You're still thinking about maintaining that nice neutral spine. Long through the back of your neck here. And then coming back down into tabletop. Lining up your ears over your shoulders over your hips, even in this position. Taking that breath in, making sure you're still in your best correction. We're going to stand up from this position one more time. If you remember which leg you used last time, we're going to do the opposite this time. So you can bring your foot forward, tuck that back toe, and you're just going to come up into standing here. From here, we're going to do a single leg deadlift. This is a good balance challenge. If you feel like you need some support from a wall or a chair, that's absolutely fine. Find that best standing position, standing nice and tall. Again, I like to keep fingertips on my hips here because it can sometimes help me stay centered. Another thing that sometimes helps is to grab some weights for your hands. These are, I believe, 6 pounds. So something not too heavy. It just helps you stay a little bit more grounded, maintain your balance a little easier. So from here, you're gonna hinge from your hip and we're extending one leg straight out back behind you and then back down. And you're only going as far as you can maintain your neutral spine. So that may not be where you're lifting all the way up, and that's completely fine. Better to maintain that stability than to move more and not keep your neutral spine. So again, we're going to do 5 on each leg. Switch, same thing other side. Really think about squeezing your glutes on your standing leg to help you maintain your balance. Every time you come back up into standing, it's that opportunity to find your best standing position, reset, make sure you're in your best postural correction, and then we move from there. So we are going to do a wide-legged squat here next. If you have a mat, you're going to bring your feet to just opposite sides of the mat here, so you're standing with your hips a little bit wider apart. Your feet can either be pointing straight ahead, or if it feels more natural to you to turn them out a little bit, that's fine too. It's kind of dependent on your hip anatomy, so you can pick the foot position that feels good, usually just not turned in, so either kind of neutral or a little bit out is fine. We're going to do hands at chest here, and then squatting down and back up. We're going to do 5 squats, thinking about that neutral spine, staying tall, staying wide, not allowing ourselves to go into that curve pattern. And then coming back up into standing. And we're going to end with that flow sequence that we started with. So standing, reaching up, into a hip hinge, into a squat. So coming up, standing, reaching up tall, hip hinging forward, into a squat. Stand and reach, hip hinge forward, little bit of a squat. One more time. Stand and reach tall, hip hinge forward, little bit of a squat. Up into standing, finding your best standing correction one final time, thinking about maintaining lots of length all throughout your spine, ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over ankles, nose and belly button lining up, equal weight through your feet. Take a few breaths. All right, good job everybody. Thank you.